Yeah, guys, I'm going to tell you something. So far, August is not being very nice. I started out where, let me turn the TV down. Started out where in the basement there was a small, well, it wasn't small, there was a large cistern in the basement. And years and years ago, well, not years and years ago, this house was built, the house was actually built in '62. And it's, I'll tell you, it's in great shape for it. He used all, you know, native cut, you know, the 2x2s or 2x4s are 2x4s, you know, the 2x8s or 2x8s. I mean, it's a well put together home. But there was a few things that he didn't have back then on this particular area. This used to be all farmland. The house next door, this road that I'm on, the street, used to be a dirt road, a mud, because it was all farm. The house next door actually has an old hitching post with a marble or granite step, so that the carriages would pull up to the step, they would hitch the horse, and the people can get out on the step, so that they don't have to get out in the mud. So it's a relatively old neighborhood. But when they built this house, they didn't have sewers. So the garage had a septic tank, and the house had a septic tank. And what they did for the gray water is he put a cistern in the basement. And it works fine, it's vented out. I mean, it really, you would have never known. When I moved the kitchen over, I disconnected almost everything from it, except from the basically the kitchen sink. And there's a wash down shower in the basement, and there's a wash machine in the basement that we only use for the dog stuff. I moved the laundry room upstairs. But over time, sewers came in, they hooked up to the sewers, except for that one particular sink. So the whole bathroom, the gray water, the brown water, everything went through the sewer. The shop here that had a bathroom in it, which still had the septic tank, did have a water main out here with water meter and things, but eventually they filled in the tank. They disconnected the main because they didn't want to pay taxes on it, and I can understand that. If you're not living in it anymore, it's a garage, why pay taxes on a house when you're parking your car in it, basically. But meanwhile, to make a long story short, the cistern was still in the basement and the kitchen sink was still hooked up to it. Now, it's been 12 years, and I've always wanted to run the sink across the back of the house, across the back of the basement, down the side of the basement, and tie it into the main. So this your way the whole house, except for the downstairs shower and the downstairs wash machine are into that cistern, which we never use the shower really. The wash machine, like I say, we may use it every 2-3 weeks to take care of some of the boys' stuff. And here I go explaining the whole thing and making a long video. However, I finally said to Eddie, listen, you know, we got to get this taken care of. So he came over and he ran it all the way across the back. Now we did have a little bit of leak, and I wasn't aware of that until I went down there one day with cable, Comcast. They wanted to go down and check something, and when we went down there, I noticed a little bit of water. Well, the pipe coming from the sink in the kitchen down to the cistern had a little crack in it. Well, this is a perfect time to just change it all. So I called Eddie, I said, let's change it all. Eddie is a plumber. Good guy, good plumber. I used to call him a good kid, but I found out he's 51 years old. He looks like he's 35. However, he came over last week, I think it was Thursday, and ran all new pipe across, 2-inch pipe all the way across the back and all the way down the side to the main sewer line, basically, and tied into that. So that's all done. And he was here all day doing that. And the thing is, when he's doing things for me, he actually loses money because he doesn't charge me the full rate. we're friends. Now, I also do things for him with the backhoe. If he's got to dig a trench or something like that, I go out with the backhoe and do it. And he pays me for doing that. Now, we don't charge full price, but however, we do charge. It's not, well, you owe me one or I owe you one. That's not a good way for friendship. You know what? Let's just pay the vig, pay the piper. This here way, we're all set. And that's how it works. So we pay one another. So anyway, he charged me $500, which was a great deal. I mean, anybody else would have been $800 to $1,200, maybe even higher to do what he did. He was here all day, and he got it done. Nice job. So I give him cash money, and we bullshit for a few minutes, and he's on his way. Well, Sunday, yeah, it was Sunday. The wife goes in the house about 2 o'clock. She says, listen, I'm going to go ahead and take a shower and start dinner. And I said, all right, not a problem. I said, I'll be in about an hour. So I was putzing around out here. I go in, I jump in the shower. I call the wife, babe, you want to get my back? She says, you know, when I came in to take the shower, I could not get that water cool. She says it was like steaming, boiling hot. She says, even on cold, because the shower has that safety valve, so it's just one valve, it isn't two. And we had it all the way on cold, and the water was still hot. Now, it was bearable. You know, it wasn't uncomfortable, but it was hotter than we normally would want it. And we took the shower, and she's saying, by chance, did you turn the heat up on the hot water tank when you were down there with Eddie? I said, no. I said, I was sweeping around there, cleaning up some of the water that was around, but I said, I didn't touch anything. But I'll go down and check it just to make sure that I didn't hit it with the broom or a box or whatever. Well, I go walking down the stairs barefoot, and as soon as I stepped off the last step, I'm in an ankle deep of water. The basement is flooded. Now, luckily, we have nothing on the basement floor, and we don't use the basement for storage. Our basement is basically empty. There's probably 1,000 skeins, or is that what you call it, of yarn, and 5 or 6 big commercial trash bags sitting on a platform, so they're not on the ground. And we never did it because of water. We just didn't want the shit sitting on concrete floor. And then I got the seat out of the van, which is up on Meadow Lake, so that's got no problem. And that's about it. There's really not anything down there that we have to worry about or do we use it for. So I'm walking around and I'm in ankle deep of water. So I'm walking around looking for this leak. You know, is it coming from above? You know, where the hell is it? And nothing is dripping. I'm not hearing anything dripping. I'm not seeing anything. Yeah, I'm really puzzled. So I go over to the air conditioner unit, you know, the furnace, and it's got that little pump on it, and make sure that that's pumping and that's not leaking. And that's all working fine. And I'm walking around, and as I walk around past the hot water tank, mind you, I'm barefooted, I feel warm water, and that was a giveaway. It was the hot water tank. Now, if I weren't barefooted, I probably would not have noticed it unless I was standing there for a while, but being barefoot, I found it right away. So I immediately turned the water off and the gas off on the hot water tank, and then I opened up that cistern that's in the basement, and the water just gushed in this thing like it was Niagara Falls. The basement emptied out pretty quick. We just had a few little puddles here and there we had to sweep into the cistern. And then I put the cap back on it, and that was it. So now I go over and I turn the hot water on. I turn the water back on the hot water tank, and it gradually starts seeping out. I said, that's it. So apparently this thing had gone earlier, you know, through the night or something, because to get that much water down there, you know, it had been going for a while. And I knew Thursday it was okay. So anyway, I look at the date on it, and it was 12 years old. Now, you know, we put it in '06. So, you know, I'm thinking, wow, you know, okay. No wonder it's leaking, you know. If I had noticed it or paid attention to that ahead of time, I probably would have had it changed out anyway, but not in the so-called emergency mode. So the water's all off. Luckily, we took a shower, you know, that afternoon, so it wasn't too bad. And I sent Eddie a text telling him that the basement was flooded, the hot water tank blew, and so on. He gets back to me about 9 o'clock and said, "Don't text me, call me if it's like that. Call me, I'll come right over." You know, Ed, I didn't want you to rush over here on a Sunday and start doing something. That's crazy. You know, first, you're not going to be able to get the hot water tank that I need. So what is it that you're actually going to get done? You know, it's not like I can't shut the water off and the basement's flooding up fast. You know, it's not one of those things. So don't worry about it. Let's take care of it tomorrow, meaning Monday. So he says, well, it's going to take me an hour or two to get all the prices, to go pick it up and stuff like that. I said, that's fine, Ed. I says, because to be honest with you, I normally do coffee on a Monday morning with the guys. Because it's not an emergency, you know, and you're going to be able to get it done today, if you're running a little late, I'll plan on being home at about 11 o'clock or so, 11:30. He was fine. That'll give him time to do what he's got to do. So I get here at 11:30, and he's just backing into the driveway. And he goes down there, sure shit, it was blown. So meanwhile, I was doing some pre-shopping on the internet, and again, I don't like Home Depot, so Lowe's was where I was looking. I found a tank that I wanted. See, we have what they call the power vent on top of our tank. Well, back 12 years ago, they had an open combustion tank. The power vent, the little sensors would fit right there on that little dome, and when they start smelling, you know, anything there at all, they kick on, the vent goes on, and it keeps all the carbon out. So that's how that worked. And then at that point, that was it. So I'm looking for another one. Well, I'm not finding any of these older so-called units, so it's not going to be an easy swap out. So I said, well, if that's the case, maybe I'll go with a tankless. So I start researching that a little bit, and well, my lines on my gas meter aren't big enough, and the line going to feed it isn't big enough. So now we're talking about roughing in the whole thing. And I already talked to the gas company a few months ago about a larger meter, and that was going to cost me $430 just for the meter. So, you know, by the time you're done, you know, I'm going to be spending, by the time it's all roughed in, all new pipes, all this bullshit, you know, I'd be up around $3,000, $3,500 easy. So I started looking at just another 50-gallon upright, you know, 50-gallon tall. And I'm finding a couple for $700, $800, but they're not doing anything for me. So then I found one, and they're not going to accept the power vent that I have. See, so I'm going to have to buy a new power vent, and then power vent adapter, $700. So I found a power vent tank, all complete, one piece, all done, 2-inch outlet, and they wanted $18.98 for it. But I couldn't get it for like a week or two. Well, I can't go a week or two without a shower, and I don't expect my wife to do that either. And even though it's hot out, we're not going to take cold showers. So I said, well, that's not going to work, and let me do a little bit more checking around. And then my wife said, you know, why don't you just call Eddie? Why are we driving yourself nuts over this? You know, call Eddie. You know, so that's when I sent him a text. Well, anyway, he got back to me the next morning, that night, but the next morning he came. He calls me, actually. Let me back up. I'm getting ahead of myself. He called me that night to yell at me for not getting the call to him right away. And then he called me the next morning with a price. He says, the tank that you were looking at Lowe's, which is an A.O. Smith, which isn't a bad tank, he says, is going to cost somewhere around $1,600 and change, so you can have it for my cost. He says, that's not a problem. He says, but then I can get you the next one up, which is better, for $30 more. So I said, well then, okay. You know, so it's going to cost me under $1,700 for one that's better. You know, and he's giving it to me wholesale, and it's coming right from a supplier, not from a big box store. And he came out, he says, Now you had to run new PVC, 2-inch PVC pipe. You had to change the gas line because the gas line 12 years ago was code. Now it isn't because they have to be grounded. Home runs they call them. But at that point, the tank was a little under $1,700. He was here all day, well, from 11 o'clock to 4:30. He said, "Give me $2,000 for the whole thing, and don't worry about it." Now, come on, you know. I mean, how can I? If he's, you know, here's a professional plumber, you know, that gets at least $1.50 an hour on the slow side, and more if it's an emergency. And here he is working for me for $50 an hour, basically. But meanwhile, we got the tank in, so that's done. So we had 2 water problems already within 5 days of one another in the beginning of August. So now I'm working on outside, you know, that water irrigation piece to get the water. My kid gives me one of these big shut-offs. I got it all over there. I double clamped everything. Everything was fine. It wasn't leaking. Everything was perfect. I went out there last night. Well, it wasn't last night, but around 5:30, 6 o'clock. The sucker's dripping again. Yeah, this is not a month for me. August is being a very naughty August. Right? I'm going to call it the month of the water. You know how we have the month of the year of the dog, the year of the rooster? Well, I've got the month of the water. That's all there is to it. Because August is driving me crazy. So now we get done with that, I come in here and I'm trying to finish off the signs. Now I was using the other machine. I said, I'm going to use the big one. So I took the roll out of that and I put it down in here and I'm looking for the drivers and I'm finding the drivers and I'm working on it. I called Sign Warehouse. They helped out a little bit. I'm going to try to keep this short as possible, and it doesn't seem it's going to work that way. But at that point, what do we got here for time? 17 minutes. So anyway, I said, you know what? I ain't got time to deal with this. I got to get the truck done. You know, and the more I fart around with this in here, the less I'm getting done out there. So I take some of that and I put it over in that machine. Next thing I know, I turn my back and I hear all kinds of chattering and all kinds of noise. That machine decides to screw up. Okay, what's the problem here? So then I said, well, let me cut another one. So I start cutting another one. Now it wasn't making a mess. However, it was double cutting all the fonts. So like for instance that O, I can't use that. So it starts double cutting all the fonts. So I said, well, okay, so much for that. So what's wrong with that? Well, I go over there and I find out that this little wheel came off and that's shattering, and that's what we have the problem. So I got to fix that real quick, which isn't a big deal. This is actually normal maintenance, but see, when you don't use it all the time, you don't think about it. You follow me? So it's not that it's broke, it's just something that these are things you're supposed to check periodically. You know, if I was using it every day, I'd be checking it, but I'm not using it every day, so I don't check it. So I got to get that done. Then I think I may have found the problem with the truck and the battery going dead all the time. Now I did a video this morning, you know, when I was talking about time and date and all that, and I mentioned it briefly. It's one of these things to where it doesn't happen enough to where anybody can find the problem. It may not happen for 4 or 5 months, then it may happen 1, 2, 3 days in a row. You know, then it may not happen. It may happen once in the morning, and then I shut it off 5 minutes later at the restaurant, and it's okay. I mean, it's just really strange. First, I thought it might be the ignition. So, you know, I bought the ignition because if I turn the key off, not all the time, but every now and then when I turn the key off, the gauges wouldn't disengage. So it's almost like it's still activated. So I wiggled the key and pulled it out, and it was fine. So I said, okay, I just got to remember to wiggle the key for now. And I bought a new ignition, which I haven't put in yet because I can't get my big ass underneath the dash to get the cover off. And then I can get inside and get the ignition out. It's not the keyway, it's the actual ignition. But then I noticed that when I have this problem with the battery, if I go to unlock the power doors with the alarm, All the doors will unlock except for the driver's door. All right, when the battery is low, when it's down around 10 volts, instead of the 12 volts, because that means something's drawing it down, and it's a new battery, so it's not that. All the doors will unlock except for that driver's door. And if I open up the other door and hit the unlock button on the other door, which opens and closes all the doors, that driver's door does not want to unlock. So I said, okay. So I'm thinking, well, I can't pay attention to that by locking it by hand, because it could take me 3 or 4 months to find out if that's it or not. So I'm pretty sure that might be the problem. I mean, what else could it be? I'm thinking, you go to lock it, it goes into semi-lock mode, but it doesn't lock off enough to where it shuts the power. So the power's always being fed into that thing, killing the battery. That's the only thing I can really think of. So I have a couple of locks here, actuators, but then I found one for my van for like 18 bucks with free shipping, and they say it will fit my door. So I'm going to take the door apart, get the actuator out of there, see if the ones that I have will work, because the ones I have are like OEM stuff. It's really not for that vehicle, but there's not much difference other than the mounting. So I'm going to see. If it is, I'll just plug it in. If it isn't, I'm not going to change mounting to make it work, because I don't want to take the door apart every time I turn around. So I'll just order the other one. But meanwhile, I'm going to disconnect that one, so that when I lock the doors, they'll all lock except for that one. That one I'll have to use by key, and we'll see what happens, and I'll order the new one in, and we'll take it one step at a time. So this has not been a good beginning of August for me at that point, to say the least. Seems like everything hits at once, and it's in the 90s every day. We're in record-breaking days here, 90 to 95, and that's hot for Connecticut. And with the humidity, it feels like 100, 104, 105. So that's the weather we're getting. Now you guys in Texas and down south, 99 degrees.